PowerCon is just 3 days away, and we are back with an original Masters of the Universe Origins wish list inspired by the vintage and classics lines. And before we dive into the episode, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you can be alerted to the latest reviews, news, and episodes when they drop. Hey everyone, welcome back to Toy Habits, and with me as always is my collector in crime Larry, and over the last few weeks we've been focusing on figures, vehicles, and creatures we've seen hiding in the box and card art for the Origins line, but we are just 3 short days away from PowerCon reveals for the Origins line, and we'll be on the ground floor bringing you the latest reveals, but we could not help but imagine the figures that could be released or announced in the Origins line, so we picked our favorites from the Masters of the Universe vintage line as well as the classics line, and kicking it off is the heroic fist-flinging tornado Sy-Klone.
I loved Sy-Klone when I was a kid. I think he was one of the last couple figures I got. Between him and Webstore, they both got a ton of playtime for me. They were just really fun figures. I remember spinning Sy-Klone over and over and surprised I didn't wear him out. That dial, it's just, I probably have a callus on my thumb, still there from that. But yeah, I love the lenticular sticker on his chest. The helmet design was really cool. And just the coloring of the figure, I just think it was a unique, character design. And I just really liked it. I thought it was a really cool figure. So be glad to see that in the Origins line.
Yeah, I thought all the sculpting detail that they put on this figure was pretty unique as well, with the halo around the helmet, his rings around his wrists, and the rings around his calves, and also the waist piece is sculpted a little differently than your typical Masters of the Universe figure. The back of his head back of his helmet has some sculpting in it too, and he just looked a lot different than just the regular stocky He-Man figure that you would see, with all the body part reuse that they've done in the line.
Right. Yeah, and then you had mentioned before that he kind of like a He-Man face.
Yeah.
A little bit, just in blue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a pretty cool thing. I never thought about it before, but I do think you're right. It's very similar facial features to He-Man, and I think it's cool that they did it in a different color blue than the rest of his body, because it does help it to stand out. So
yeah, and this one definitely stands out on the shelf because of all the bright colors that they're using with the yellows and the blues and the reds, and I think that's really what we remember about the vintage line, is just all of the unique characters that they put out that are super colorful and just really engaging to play with.
Yeah, I agree. I've got Sy-Klone in my classics collection right now, and between him and Buzz-Off, they're kind of the only figures that have any yellow on them, and they definitely stand out on the shelf. So
yeah, definitely. And one other figure that I would love to see in this line to build up the Horde faction would be Scorpia, the stinging Horde enforcer, and she showed up in the She-Ra Filmation cartoon, and she is a member of the Horde, and she's a part human, part scorpion, which I think is cool. She's a member of the Scorpionia race, so it's an all-female dominant warrior with, they all have claw-like hands, and they all look like scorpions. So I actually really love the She-Ra cartoon, so I would love to see something like this in the Origins line. We need more She-Ra and Horde and Great Rebellion figures, I think, in the Origins line to build that part out.
I feel like I was done with He-Man stuff by the time She-Ra came out, so I was never into that as a kid. I did have all of them in classics just because I was pretty much getting anything that they put out. I subscribed to every subscription that they had and bought every, Comic-Con or any exclusives or whatever. There wasn't anything that was missing. And I gotta say, I was just kind of indifferent on most of the She-Ra figures because I didn't have any real history with that line or the characters. So most of it was it's just more figures on a shelf. They didn't really have any significance for me. But Scorpia, definitely, I forgot how cool of a figure design she is. Yeah. The classics figure is just great. So many cool details that I think would be really a great translation over to Origins. The thing that I'm excited about is that since they seem to have fixed that problem with the knees on the female characters, so I think that going forward, I'm not as apprehensive about seeing female figures released, because I feel like they've hopefully corrected that.
Yeah.
And we'll have more natural looking, female figures. So I think Scorpia would be great.
I really like the design of this figure too, and the tail is my favorite part of this figure. And it was funny because in the cartoon, She-Ra would sometimes grab her tail and just kind of throw her asunder and out of the way. Yeah, I also love that the way that that horde symbol kind of bleeds up into her abdomen, so it's kind of like a connected piece there at the waist. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that is cool. And I hope that they would incorporate a lot of those design choices into the Origins line. I would like to see pretty much just a direct, translation of the Classics figure over to Origins. So I think that'd be what I would hope for anyways.
Yes. Another one that I would hope for is the evil snake man with the deadly grip being Lord Grasp. Now, I love this figure, and it was actually one of the figures that was originally going to be produced in '88, and it was planned for the continuation of the He-Man line, but of course that line got canceled, and then they finally released Lord Grasp as part of that 3-pack for that PowerCon exclusive, which is so expensive right now. I did have a Lord Grasp, but I think I sold it, and now I'm regretting that as well. But it's funny because like all those figures in that 3-pack were a kit bash of several different figures. So they put Squeeze's head on Lord Grasp. It's got Scareglow's cape. It's got Clawful's claw. And then it's got the stock body, of course, from just any Masters of the Universe Classics figure.
Right, and is that a King Hiss shield?
It is, yes.
Yeah.
Good eye. Yep.
And the funny thing is, like, I've never really looked at this figure just because I wasn't collecting Classics when that 3-pack came out. Or even if maybe I was, but that wasn't on my radar because I was just trying to go back and buy some of the single releases. Yeah. And that 3-pack was just like, this just extra stuff. They're cool, but looking at him, he does have a really cool design. They always do well with disguising that, reuse of parts. And I think like the color choices that they made definitely kind of help hide those choices. So I think it's cool. I always like seeing that.
Yeah, I think they did an especially good job with this figure because it doesn't look like a kit bash. It looks like a brand new design. Like you could look at the other characters in that pack like Terror, and you could see like, okay, yeah, it's basically Whiplash and Trapjaw as Terror, just kind of stuck together.
Right. Yep.
And painted purple. But this one looks really unique. I love the fact that they put Squeeze's head on there because it's a unique head sculpt and it looks kind of freaky too.
Oh yeah, it does. I mean, those teeth are it looks like a shark, like a shark mouth or something.
Yeah,
like a shark version of the Joker actually is what it looks like to me.
That's a great portrayal of this figure.
I think it'd be cool if they would recolor that shield to match the claw, though. Like if they changed that to like a black shield with a matching yellow snake instead, I almost think that might look cooler. I mean, I know it matches the cape and the belt and the green in the boots, but I think it'd be cool to have something else that would kind of tie in that yellow and black.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great idea. All right, and next up we have the heroic ruler of future Eternia, King He-Man.
Yeah, I thought this was a really cool figure in the Classics line. When I first got it, I couldn't decide what I thought of it. It's been one of my regrets selling from that line. I just think he's a really cool figure design. To me, he's a kind of a good portrayal of what a future He-Man could look like. Yeah. As King. I think it's cool that they've got thicker, bigger boots, and I like the cape. I like the shoulder pieces that come up. It's definitely a cool look for a different iteration of He-Man, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that. And you can also see some of the tie-ins to King Randor with the long hair and the beard and the blue cape and the gold accents and the crown, and so he kind of looks like his dad a little bit in this one.
Yeah, and I
think is really cool.
Yeah, that's what I like about him. He looks like a wiser version of He-Man, and I think that makes sense. As time would go on, he would have more experiences and gain wisdom just like anybody else. So
yeah, and then from a parts perspective, I was looking at the shin armor, and he shares the same shin armor with Zodak. So I think they did a good job with just painting some of those accents and kind of tying those blues and golds into his overall paint app, which is nice. I mean, they could have left it just a plain gray, but it's those like little details that make this figure really stand out.
And I think as an Origins figure, I think he would look cool, and you could do some of the same figure design. It'd be cool to see the 2000X sword. I don't remember the storyline, whether there was an actual story link to why he had that, or if they were just once again trying to get more of the different pieces of Motu lore out there with the figure. and that's why he came with it, you know.
In some of the figures, they put in some Filmation accessories that weren't ever produced, but they just kind of show up in other figures. But speaking of Filmation characters that, you know, were never produced, Strongarm or Stronger, the evil power punching warrior, I think was one of my favorite evil villains of just Skeletor's little crew that he had. You know, I love the robotic cybernetic arm, and just the way that he showed up in the cartoon was, he had his moment of glory when he ambushed He-Man and locked him in a photanium body cell in that episode. So I just think he's a unique character, and I love the bright orange, you know, that he has on the paint app.
I love the head sculpt just because it's so different. He just has a futuristic look, almost like a punk rock look somehow. The ears are super weird, and the armor is pretty unique too. I think for my shelf, I would probably just display him with the shorter of the two arms. It looks like too much, you know. I just for whatever reason, I like the shorter arm better. Yeah. But I think it looks cool. And I like the other hand is, you know, the glove is yellow. Just, I don't know. It's just another point of detail for the figure, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I could see displaying it with the shorter arm, and I think when I did have him displayed, I think I have him in a box right now because I just can't display everything. Everybody. But I don't know. I kind of feel like when I was displaying Mechanic, I didn't want his like really huge extended head on display because it just looked weird. And so I just put him.
Yep. I was going to bring that up because that's the same way I was too. I didn't want the full extended neck. I want it to be an extension, but not full blown. Like, it's just too much. It just looks awkward somehow.
Yeah, no, you're right. The body is very plain. But it's those details like the armor and the glove, and his head is interesting because it kind of looks like something at a Godzilla movie where, you know, you kind of have that robot attacking Godzilla too. So it kind of has a lot of references that you can think of for this one too.
Yeah, it's definitely cool. And once again, I think this would be a cool figure for Origins.
Yeah,
you're kind of looking at the figures on my shelf back here. There's you know, over in the Evil Warriors, Beastman is orange. And then, of course, Faker's got some orange on him, but I think this would be another cool figure that would stand out just because of the bright colors. And
yeah, because I could totally pick out Beastman on your shelf, and, you know, it's pretty far away for me, so this would definitely...
It's very far away for you.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I think another one that would also stand out on the shelf too is the next figure being Draegoman, the evil fire-breathing menace.
I would be so excited if they would announce this for Origins, partially because it's just a freaking awesome figure. I mean, it was one of my favorite Classics figures. It totally fits in with the rest of the line. It looks like it could have been something made back in the 80s. It's a dragon, you know, like when it's got a flaming sword, he's got cool armor. I don't know how you could not make it such a cool figure design. So I think that I would be excited to see the figure, but also I think what the figure represents, in that they're, you know, I would like to see them doing those kind of things with Origins in bringing some new ideas to it, where it's not, we can see that it's not just a purely vintage characters release, but we're also going to get some new life breathed into the line kind of thing, you know. And I think that it's important going forward, because at some point we're going to run out of those, you know, the vintage figures, and I would like to see Origins continue because I think it's a really cool line.
It's a very cool line, and there are so many characters in the Filmation cartoon and also in the 2000X cartoon that they didn't have figure designs. So I think this is another example of, you know, a figure either coming from a comic or the lore that's just, it's a new design, and it's a badass figure. Like, the head sculpt is amazing. The reptilian skin on it that's sculpted on it is so cool, and the wing design is fantastic. It's got texturing on the back, it's got texturing on the inside, and there's just so much detail all around this figure.
I feel like he'd be a deluxe release though. Okay. Because if you remember right, with the Classics figure, they didn't have enough money to include the flaming sword and the shield and the whip.
Right.
And so they had to split up the whip and the shield into a weapons pack later on down the line.
Oh, right.
And so I think that if you made him a deluxe figure, I mean, make him a convention exclusive. I don't care. Just put him out.
Yeah.
You know, and have all the stuff with him. I want the wings, because I think that would be super cool looking in the Origins kind of design. I think that, you know, the wings would translate really well over to Origins, and then seeing all the flaming weapons and shield, I just think it'd be cool. Pretty cool.
I could totally see this as a deluxe figure too, just in that wider blister, because I think they'll probably pack the wings in the blister separately if they did that, plus the sword and the whip and the shield. That'd just be amazing.
It would, and then of course the art that would come along with it. It'd be really cool to see how they, you know, what they do with that too.
Yes, definitely would love to see this one in the line. And another classic figure to see in the line would be the evil tail thrashing warrior Whiplash.
Yeah, I feel like he's a must-have, and I'm sure he'll be released at some point. It just depends on how soon they're going to get to him.
Yeah.
Actually, most of his body is Buzz-Off, right?
Yeah, it's a combination of Buzz-Off, Clawful, and Skeletor.
So maybe Clawful comes first, I guess, and then Whiplash should be just a little bit later on down the road. I didn't have him as a kid, but I loved the Classics figure, and he's one I have gone back and purchased again for Classics.
Oh, that's great.
And the funny thing is, when I had the collection before, I always had him with a vintage style head, but for whatever reason now the 2000X head appeals to me more, so that's what I have him displayed with. And so I think that this would be a cool one to have both heads packed in. Yeah. Just as an extra accessory, and that way you can go either direction. And I think that's a cool thing with Origins, is being able to kind of bring the vintage line back, you know, in updated form, but looking like it did, but also having some of those newer elements added in. And I think it's just a really cool combination that makes the line.
Yeah, I'm excited about that part. It's a classic character, and I love the soft rubbery tail on this one. And, you know, a lot of the figures had that twisting, punching action, but this one was cool because you could whip his tail around, which is cool.
Yeah, I would hope to see the twist feature on Whiplash. It's hard to say whether I think they'll do it. I kind of don't see them incorporating that. But I think if you're going to do it on certain figures, I think Whiplash seems like he should be somebody that gets it. I felt like Fisto should have gotten his, you know, the power punch, but I'm okay without it. But I would love to see if they would do it. I just think it's a fun action feature. So
yeah, well, you might have to just get the vintage figure then.
Yeah.
Darn.
That's not something we can start. I just can't.
Slippery slope. I hear you.
Yeah. No, I've looked at vintage lots and stuff, and it's just, there's so many that I'd think, oh yeah, I could grab that one. Looks reasonable. And then by the time you get to the actual, you know, final bids, I can't justify it. And really, I would probably rather just build out my collection of Classics figures a little more, just because I think I'd spend too much on the vintage line trying to go back, and I'd only be able to get a handful of figures. So
yeah, we'll have to make a list of figures that we need to get. So
yeah,
I'm down with that. And another one that would be awesome to see in the line, who also shares some parts with Whiplash, would be Clawful, the warrior with the grip of evil.
Yeah, I had him as a kid, and I remember playing with him in the bathtub and stuff. For some reason, I always had him and Fisto fighting. He was a cool figure. His head sculpt is so funny. It looks like something from the Muppets. Yeah. With the super bushy eyebrows and the kind of the goofy pointed teeth and stuff. But yeah, he's really cool, and I always loved playing with him when I was a kid. And then of course the claw feature and the bright green club. I mean, that was. Or mace, I guess. Uh-huh. But I think, yeah, he's a cool figure, and I'm sure we'll get him in Origins. I'd like to see him sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I would too. You know, what's not to like about a half man, half lobster?
Yeah, exactly. I just think he's cool because he's kind of got that, you know, little darker skin tone. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny because in the vintage line, he did come with 2 different sets of legs at some point. So he came with the jaggedy legs that Buzz-Off had, but then at some point in the design, they had switched, and they had actually switched out his legs with Skeletor. So you'll see him with normal looking legs, and then legs with, you know, that kind of scaly, more insect look to it.
Nice. I didn't know that.
So it's funny because when I was looking at pictures of this, I was like, wait, he's got normal looking legs and he's got other legs. And I'm like, okay. So I looked it up, and that's what it was.
Well, I can't remember now which one I had. Maybe I'll have to... I wish I had pictures.
Yeah, me too.
And I think he's another figure that needs both head designs.
Mm-hmm.
They're both cool in their own way, so I want to see both of them if we get him.
Another interesting figure to have in the line is Snout Spout, who's the heroic water blasting firefighter. And he actually showed up in the She-Ra cartoon, and he only showed up in 3 episodes. And he was called Hose Nose in the first episode. So he wasn't even called Snout Spout until I think they made the figure, they figured out his name, and then they changed it in the latter 2 episodes that he was in. But he really played a background character, but the sculpt and the design is so cool on this figure.
Yeah, it is. It's a fun theme for him, to be kind of like a firefighter for Eternia.
Yeah.
And yeah, his head sculpt, of course, is it's so big compared to the rest of his body.
Yeah.
And his kind of like super sad eyes, and just he's a fun figure though, and of course the weapon is cool. I like the way they did the weapon for the classics line.
Yep.
But I think that to keep with kind of that vintage feel, you probably need to just make the one piece weapon instead of splitting it up into different parts.
Yeah, I think I might know why he has sad eyes. The backstory on him is kind of sad. So he was a Etherian peasant who was captured by Hordak and subject to fiendish experiments, which actually turned him into an elephant cyborg. So I was like, poor guy.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Poor guy.
Yeah, that'll ruin anybody's day, I would say.
Right. But yeah, the head sculpt is cool, and the backpack was neat because you can put water in it, and it's got a little button that you can shoot water out. And yeah, it kind of goes along with that resident firefighter theme, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, and he's had a couple different head sculpts. He had a separate head sculpt that was released for classics, but I don't know that I feel like this one would need a separate head sculpt. I think just a vintage style head would be fine.
Yeah,
and I know for classics, because of the material that they used, my classics Snout Spout started getting some like cracking in it.
Oh,
because of the material, like right along the areas where it would bend, it started some slight cracking in there, and I would guess they'll probably try to just make that just a regular plastic piece instead of the kind of the flex that they use for classics. But
yeah, some of the figures in the classics line suffered from that. They were made from a very, very hard plastic. Like a couple of the 2 3-packs that had the Lord Grasp 3-pack, and also the one that had the comic pack Stratos. Those were made with such hard plastic that started happening to some of those figures too. Like you would see little cracks in them and stuff like that. So maybe it was just how they were producing maybe that kind of figure at the time. Maybe it was around that year that they did it too.
Yeah. Hopefully we're past all that.
I hope so. But, quality control issues always crop up once in a while. But hopefully not on the next figure, which is Spikor, the untouchable master of evil combat.
Yeah, Spikor is super cool. He just, I love the colors for him. Just that dark blue and purple. Well, it's really not even dark blue. It's more of like a dark purple blue. The purple arms and legs. It's unique in its own way. And I know for the classics line, I think he had just a separate left hand, and then he had the kind of pronged
little
trident kind of thing. That I think there were 2 different versions, like a short one and then an extended one, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So I think those would be some good accessories with him. And we've kind of seen what they might do with Spikor with some of the WWE or Masters of WWE Eternia. Is that right?
Yep. Masters of the WWE Universe. Yes. Yeah. There's a good chance of this one coming out because the Junkyard Dog that's coming out totally has that Spikor armor on him. So yeah, that could totally see that one coming out. And I really like the way they did the eyes on Spikor because they really pop. Like yellow was the perfect color for his eyes on this one. And he kind of looks very like sea urchin-y, with the spikes, and it's just a really weird character that just has a very cool design. And it's funny because his arm is straight, which differs from like the standard bent arm from these figures. And so I think it's like one of the only figures that has a straight arm in the collection too.
Yeah, and for me personally, I would want that arm to be, to have the articulation like the rest. Maybe they would do a separate arm for him or something, to keep that vintage feel to him.
Yeah, I could see that.
Another thing I love about him is that they've incorporated kind of that lighter blue in the kind of that collar piece.
Yeah.
And then those other, I don't know what those were supposed to be. Like, why did he have those smaller, they weren't spike pieces necessarily, but just the other part of his armor? Was that like buttons for
I don't know.
Is that a spike shirt?
I don't know. I've always wondered that too, because they don't do anything. Like, you can't push them, and they it's his trident doesn't extend when you push those buttons. So and maybe it was just a variation just to make him look a little different. It's all of his parts are just kind of soft and rubbery, and didn't hurt myself playing with it as a kid. So it was good.
Yeah. Yeah, if they would have done that rubbery plastic, then that would have been bad. You'd even pick him up.
Like, Mom, I'm bleeding again.
Yeah.
The classic characters are great, and the next one that's on the list is one that showed up in the cartoon, but they never made a figure out of him. And I love these figures that weren't the main characters that they started producing for the classics line. So I chose Lizard Man, the heroic cold-blooded ally. And there's something about this figure that I just really liked off the bat, probably because I liked how he was portrayed in the cartoon. And again, this was another one that only appeared in 3 episodes, but the figure design is cool. It's just a very different figure. It's a very slender figure, and it's different from the bulky, stocky He-Man figures in the line.
I agree, and I think he's kind of got that different body sculpt, and that the green on him is just a really cool. I love that color green, and I think that with combined with the kind of the blue like tunic and waist cloth piece, he's just got a lot of unique pieces, and then he's got kind of the longer neck and of course the kind of the lizard kind of head sculpt. And I think he'd be a cool one to see in Origins. And it'd be weird to see if they would do a different body sculpt, or if he would end up looking, having the same body sculpt as the other figures, but maybe with the kind of the longer neck and different things, he would look kind of like the classics version.
I could see them tweaking some of the female body parts on this one, because his parts on the classics line are so slender, they kind of mimic those female parts anyway. So, you could take Tila Legs or Evil Lynn's eggs and just
Evil Lynn's eggs. I don't know.
Yeah. Won't be taking those, but you might take her legs and do a little sculpting on them, just to beef them up a little bit.
Yeah, and he's on some of the card art, right?
I don't know. I would love to go back. I think I did see a lizard person on there, but I don't know if that's him or not. So I would love to go back and check that out. That'd be neat if it was. That'd be cool.
I don't know that. I guess it's not a guarantee that if you see something on a card back or something,
yes, it is.
You're gonna really...
It's playing out that way with the
it is.
If
so, I think we're in for a really, really cool couple of years, because they've shown a lot of stuff.
I think so. It's funny because my favorite part of this figure is not the actual figure, but it's the accessory that he comes with. He comes with the Diamond Ray of Disappearance, and that's actually a accessory for Skeletor. And so if you actually turn the thing over, it has molded sections cut out to actually have Skeletor grip that particular piece. So they actually designed it for Skeletor, packed it with Lizard Man, which I think we were talking about this earlier in the show, just about those accessories that they're including that kind of harken back to the Filmation cartoon, and this is the prime example of one.
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool to see, because I loved all those things about classics. You were definitely building a collection as you went. And by the time you got to the end of it, it was hard to remember, like, oh, wait, this doesn't go with him. It goes with this figure over here. And so I think that was a really cool part of the line. And I would love to see some of those things in Origins, where they're tying into figures that they've made in previous waves and things like that. So
yes, definitely. And our last figure that we're going to round out on this list is an original design. It is the freakishly fanged Snake Man Warrior Fang-Or.
Yeah, this is one of my bigger regrets in the classics line. I've never had this figure, and when I was getting back into my classics collection, I saw Fang-Or, but it was one of those, I need Trapjaw and Triclops and some of the more standard figures. So because I feel like I could have gotten him on Big Bad Toy Store at the time. I mean, trying to buy him now is ridiculous.
Right.
Because but he's such a cool figure design. I mean, just for the Snake Man, I know he wasn't even, like you said, he's an original concept, but he's probably my favorite Snake Man character. He's just so cool.
Yeah, it's such a fun design with this guy, and yeah, the sculpt is great. The massive fangs are so cool, and you know, it's like I think back to our conversation about like Mechanex's head and Strongor's arm, and I'm like, I think I would probably prefer the longer fangs on this one just because it just looks so cool.
Yeah, he kind of goes against our previous conversation, but yeah, I think I would choose the longer fangs too. What is the accessories? Is that a screwdriver?
He's got snake theme tools. He's got a wrench, a screwdriver, and a hammer. And if you take a closer look at the wrench and the hammer, they actually have the wrench head has a snake face on it, and the hammer also has a snake face on it. And I don't really know the backstory on it. It's just like cool stuff. I'm like, I wonder, I need to look up what this guy does. Is he a mechanic? What does he do for the snake?
If that's the mechanic, I'm finding a different shop, because I mean, I know he's just working on the car, but I just don't feel like I can deal with this place if this is the mechanic that they've got.
Yeah, because what if you got an issue with the car? Like, are you going to talk to this guy? I don't think so.
Probably not. I mean, he's got a really wicked looking sword and those fangs. I mean, I just don't think I can do it.
No, he might send his little serpent dragon buddy after you too. So.
Yeah, that thing's super cool too. I would love to see this figure for Origins, just because I think he would look great as a with the Origins kind of design, and he'd probably have to be a deluxe figure again. We're coming up with a lot of deluxe figure releases, I know, but I'm good with it. I think that's
fine with that too. Like,
it's the fun part of the line is to get all these accessories and stuff.
If it comes with all of the stuff, it's fine with me. But yeah, he's got a very cool color scheme, and just the way that they've done the snake armor on him and the huge snake belt buckle. It almost looks like one of those like WWE championship belts that he's wearing.
So right now we've got a WWE champion mechanic.
There we go. I like that.
And he's a snake. So he's a really, really well-traveled and just got he's a very interesting person at this point.
Got a lot of side hustles going on. He's obviously, he might be a champion because he's jacked, so.
Yeah, he could be.
But yeah, the whole color scheme looks great, and I definitely wish that I had picked this figure up a long time ago, and I'm going to have to get, I think, lucky in, maybe purchasing a giant lot again that might have him in it, but chances of that are pretty slim.
And we've talked about maybe we'll just buy one on eBay and just split him, and we just, we'll share custody and we'll ship him back and forth, and he can. I mean, he'd probably have to live in like a case or something because how freaking expensive he is. But.
Right. Yeah, definitely. But I might have to. We might have to fly back and forth and carry him in a suitcase with a cuff around him, because I wouldn't trust the post office with this one.
That's true. Yeah. Okay. This is getting more expensive though as we go. So
That's
I don't
true.
Know
Maybe we should just buy one and call it good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the cool thing about all of these figures, and and the great thing about the Filmation cartoon, is that there were so many amazing characters in the line that were made into figures and also didn't appear in the line and also the comics. So I think it's really cool to think about all of the figures that could be possibilities. And so would love to know what everybody else would love to see in the line in the comments below. And we hope you've enjoyed our personal wish list. I'm Michael.
And I'm Larry.
And the next time we'll see you is at PowerCon, so subscribe to the channel on your way out, and thanks for tuning into Toy Habits.